Hey, my name is Tim Buell. I'm a drummer living here in Nashville, Tennessee, and you are watching the fourth installment of this series, Finale for Drummers. So in today's lesson, what we're going to tackle is making a drum chart in Finale. This is really going to be useful for band directors, making an arrangement for a jazz group or something like that. Or if you're a singer-songwriter and you want to provide a chart that is specific for the drummer to help them play the song that you're doing, or maybe you're a drummer yourself and you're looking to make charts for your next gig, this is going to be the way that you can make charts. So we're going to start with the template that I made several episodes ago. If you go back to episode 2 of this series, there's a template that you can download. So if you need that, you can go get the template there. If you want to see me use the setup wizard, you can see that in that episode. But right now, I'm just going to use the template that I designed back in that episode. So for that, I'm just going to double click this template. And now we are all set up, ready to go. Here's a taste of the video of what we're going to be making a drum chart for. I can go ahead and already tell I don't need this drum notation legend. This isn't a transcription, so I don't really need it. I'm going to get rid of it. That clears up a lot of room for us. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go ahead. Right now, there are 3 measures per system. I actually want to add more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the first measure. Going to go all the way to the end of the document. Hold Shift and hit the last measure. Hit Control M. And this is my Fit Measures dialog box. I'm going to go Fit 4 to align. And now I have a lot more measures. So like any good chart, I'm going to go ahead and get my tempo first off and see what we're working with. So the tempo is 105. I'm going to go ahead and add that to this note, double click this. I'm going to go to, I'll do modern pop as the kind of genre, and 105. So in charts, what I really like to do is I make sure that as I'm doing each section, I kind of mark like the intro, the verse, the chorus, all of that stuff, because that means during a rehearsal it'll be really easy for whoever's drumming to jump to whatever section they need to be looking at. So what I'm going to do before I start anything is I'm going to go to this technique section, and I'm going to duplicate one of these and create a new dialog that says intro, and I'm going to go to enclosure shape and do rectangle. So now anytime that I make a kind of section marker on here, it'll have a nice little box around it, which will separate it from any other notes that are going on. There's a little fill that leads in. Let's grab that fill. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so it's a bar of 2, 4. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a measure from here, hit Control C, and then hit Control I to copy a new measure in front of the one that has all this markings in it. I'm going to click this first measure and I'm going to make it a bar of 2, 4, and then make that a bar of 4, 4 again. And I'm going to go to this measure here and click Hide. And I'm also going to right click it and go to bar line and go to double. Let's see, that first fill is So that's the first fill. This whole thing isn't going to be a transcription, but when I can be specific, you know, especially toward the front of the chart, I'm going to be specific with some of the parts, some of the fills. That way, whoever's reading this chart can kind of get a suggestion of the type of vibe, the type of fills that are in this performance. That's the first measure. Second measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what it is it's kind of, let's see, crash, crash. I'm going to go ahead and tie this. So that's the first measure. And then the second measure is kind of a repeat of this same thing. That's kind of the first 2 measures. Let's go back and hear everything we have now, lead in, fill to here. So that's kind of how this intro section goes. And then measure 3 is here. So it's kind of the same thing. So what I'm gonna do here is I have the intro kind of vibe notated in these first two measures. So what I'm gonna do for most of the rest of the intro is just kind of tell the drummer, hey, kind of do the same thing. You know, hit the accents, one E and hit that on the kind of downbeat of the every other measure and then do a little fill into that figure again. So what I'll do for the next one is I'm gonna highlight the next two measures, go to my staff tool, right click them and say 2-bar repeat. But I wanna make very clear that that accent, one E and every other measure needs to be kind of there every single time it comes by. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some rhythmic notation above this staff line that kind of indicates that that part is still happening. I need to go to my staff tool. I need to right click and say, define staff styles. I want to go down to the 2-bar repeat and I want to go to alternate notation here and turn on notes, articulations, and expressions. Hit OK, hit OK. And what that means now is that not only can I add this 2-measure repeat thing here, but I can go to my notation, select my second layer by hitting Alt-Shift-2, and I can actually add this figure up here under my rhythmic cues. One E and then I can kind of tie it like that. And what I can do is I can hit L to flip these stems up. And now what I have is a somewhat wonky rhythmic notation above the staff line. I can go to the resize tool right here and I can actually make these a little smaller. And I can go here to this measure tool and I can kind of scooch this over. And now what we have is a nice 2-bar repeat that incorporates the kind of figure that the band is doing that I need to be playing around in the drums. I know a lot of people have questions about how to get rhythmic cues above the staff when you're using slash notation, and that works exactly like, so if I go to this slash notation right here, I go to staff, I right click and hit define staff styles. I can go to slash notation, alternate notation, go to other layers and select notes, articulations, this. And now I can go to my simple entry, go to my second layer, and in the rhythmic cues one, I can add my rhythmic cues above the staff. Hit L to flip the stems on all of these. And if I really want to, I can use my resize tool, resize these all down a little bit. Now I have slash notation, but I also have rhythmic notation above the measure. So that happens for measure 3 and 4. All right, so we get to bar 9 and now we have some groove that's a little different. So I'm gonna go to I'm gonna make a little bar line there. And we're gonna call what we've stumbled into now as the verse. Gonna go ahead, double click my measure where the verse begins, find my intro thing, go to verse. And also there's a little drum fill going into this part. So I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go drum fill. There's kind of a drum fill there every time, but I want to make sure that, hey, right at the end of this measure, you know you got to play a drum fill. So we're in the verse. Let's get this first bar of the verse. That looks to be the first bar of the verse. Again, let's do that up like that. Tighten that up there so there's no collision. Let's go to the second bar of the verse. So that's kind of the first 4 bars of this verse here. And now what we're gonna do is, you know, however I can add repeats, I'm gonna do it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna grab these two, right click and hit 2-bar repeat. 2-bar repeat, because, you know, it just kind of repeats the same thing over. And then we get into the pre-chorus. And here we have a kind of like an offbeat hi-hat vibe. Does that, and then let's see, bar 18. So that's kind of the second bar, and I'm gonna guess that the rest of the pre-chorus is kind of similar. So what I'm gonna do here is I don't want to tell the performer play exactly what you're playing. do a similar thing. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go to my staff tool, right click and hit slash notation, and I'm gonna add slash notation here and tell them right at the end of this measure, play a little drum fill, and I'll add a little note at the beginning of this measure that just says, I'm gonna say similar offbeat groove. And these measures are kind of taking up a lot of space, so I'm just kind of gonna tuck them into a little area. All right, so let's go to measure 21. It kind of continues here, so I'm gonna go ahead and go. And the next couple of bars are a similar thing, but it's slightly more open hi-hat, and it's kind of like a driving 4 on the floor thing. Now I'm gonna add slash notation and say kind of a similar thing, but put a little drum fill at the end of it here. And then measure 29, there's another little change up. All right, and it kind of continues the next measure. And then I'm gonna do some slashes because I bet you it does that till the end of it. And we're on to whatever comes after this chorus, which actually, I guess at the very end of this chorus, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of a 2-bar. So I added 2 measures there because that's just kind of a hold. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go back to this slash notation. We're gonna make this rhythmic notation. And we're gonna do and I'm just gonna have it be a hold. That's kind of the end through the first chorus. So we kind of go into the verse again. So I'm gonna give you the verse again. And I'm just gonna kind of copy over the verse. Okay, and 39 kind of gets switched up a little bit earlier at 39. So that's kind of the first 2 measures there. Let's see if it continues. So yeah, it does kind of continue. So we're gonna go, I like these 2-bar repeat. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go slash notation and just add a note. And then the chorus comes around, and the nice thing about writing charts is, you know, a lot of them are very similar. Now I'm gonna copy over the chorus. Now we have a different part here. So here we're gonna go to let's call this the post-chorus. It's the section after the chorus that, you know, is a little different, and it's adding a couple little chime things. It's a little different, so we're gonna give it its own little section here. So measure 67, we're going over the ride cymbal. And so that's kind of the new groove for what we're calling the post-chorus. Let's see how long this continues and how many slashes we can put in here. So this goes all the way to measure 75. And then, spoiler alert, we have a little drum solo. So at measure 75, we have a drum solo. Now we're gonna be using rhythmic notation to identify where these hits are, and then the drums can solo around it. So let's highlight these 8 bars using our staff tool, right click and hit rhythmic notation. That way we can just input these rhythms in here and it'll be nice and easy. Put an accent over those figures. In parentheses, let's do drums solo around figures. Let's make this slash notation. So that's kind of what we have. So we have kind of an odd number of measures here. I think it's important to always think of the person that will be reading the chart. And for me, when I look at this, I see kind of a 7-bar section and then a 6-bar section. So I've kind of notated it like that. What I don't want to do is kind of split up this 2-bar pattern over 2 lines. So I don't want to put this measure up here because then it kind of throws off the symmetry of kind of like all these phrases. But what I could do is probably put that up here. And that would tighten it up a little bit. But then that note gets kind of crammed. So, you know, I'm not hurting for space. I'm just going to spread it all out like this. Let all this stuff breathe on the page a little bit. So now let's get into the rest of the song. So it kind of switches that driving ride groove, but on the very last measure, it kind of ends on a no downbeat, kind of 3E and a 4E and a 4E and a figure. So what I want to do is in this measure right here, I want to incorporate the 4E and a rhythm. So I want to show you a little trick about using slash notation and rhythmic notation. So what you can do is I'm going to go down here to a new measure. I'm going to use my staff tool to make this rhythmic notation. And in it, I'm going to go dot, 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 dot. Give it a hard cut off on that very last note. Now that I have this rhythmic notation here, I can actually drag this into a measure of slash notation. And boom, there you go. I now have slash notation and rhythmic notation. So now I can zoom out. So that's the drum chart. That's what it looks like. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the entire drum chart synced up with the performance so that you can kind of see the results of our labor here.